It is Friday, March 27th. Welcome to the SBAM Daily Briefing, helping small businesses navigate the coronavirus and government shutdown. It's day 4 of stay home and stay safe, and we're hearing a lot from our members about just trying to settle into this and understand it. Just wanted to remind everybody that really what we're about is trying to help small businesses in Michigan navigate, understand the resources, understand the rules, and really come out on the other side of this whole thing. We're doing that by essentially redirecting our entire organization. All of the employees at SBAM are working remotely, but all of us are working and all of us are really at it every day, trying to make it easier and more understandable for our members. So we're at work trying to help you small business owners. So we have been projecting and expecting any day that the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act would become law, or the CARES Act. That has happened. As we speak, it appears likely that it is going literally as we speak to the president for his signature, which he will sign, and it will become law. Brian, what do you? We've been sort of pouring through it as it was proposed and as it got near the end. What are the kind of the high points of it?
Yeah, and well, let me start out, Rob, by saying that we have on our website now what I consider to be the best summary of the small business section of any organization out there. It's at the top. It's the National Small Business Association, of which we are a member, and typically have people on their board as well. So a great partner organization, awesome summary. But let me just give you the high level of what this legislation does. So through the SBA 7A loan guarantee program, so it's an existing network of lenders and an existing SBA lending program, they're going to provide relief, but it'll turn out to be grant relief for many people. So what they'll do is they'll say, look at your total payroll and expenses from last year and divide it by 12 to get your average monthly payroll expenses. And they will do a loan up to 250% of that. So that's your maximum loan amount that you can get for this Payroll Protection Act funding that the feds are approving. The president will sign in just a little while. Now that is meant to help you maintain your payroll, but you can use it for paying interest on debt as long as that debt was outstanding before February 15th of this year. You can use it to pay your rent, and of course use it to pay utility bills in your employees. There will be rules that we don't know all the details of yet. We will soon. As long as you are able to, from the time you take out that loan for the next 8 weeks, as long as you're able to maintain payroll, the number of people on your payroll, and about the same amount as before in terms of their pay, as you did last year. So they'll compare what you do in the 8 weeks after this loan to last year. As long as you're able to maintain that, they'll forgive the loan at the end of that process. So what will start out as a loan will be forgiven. There are a couple caveats in terms of the forgiven loans. Only up to $100,000 per employee. So if you have any employees over that part of the loan won't be forgiven. And also, if you've had to lay people off, you'd have to call them back, and in order to put them back on your payroll, and if you want the loan forgiven anyway. And then also, if you've made reductions, there's going to be further in terms of maybe you didn't lay people off, but you lowered their pay or your pay, or your team, and any members of your team. There'll be some limitations because they might prorate the forgiven part if pay has been lowered too. So a lot more yet to come, but this is huge. I have never seen the Small Business Association or Small Business Administration, sorry, we're the association, they're the administration that does the loans. I have never seen them do forgivable loans. And then beyond that, the loans do not require personal guarantees. They do not require some sort of an asset check. They don't require that you have been turned down for a loan elsewhere before you can get this one. So this really is small business relief. Now, there's $350 billion. That sounds like a lot. It is a lot. We are so thankful for it. There are a lot of small businesses around the country. We spoke to Congressman Upton yesterday. He said if it's not enough, they're already starting work on another package just to be ready for things that they maybe didn't get right in this package. There are 19 states, last I knew, that had closures. So I think those are the states that are going to have the biggest need for this funding. But we're optimistic and we're thankful. Now we've got to work out all the details and make sure that every single one of our businesses that wants to take advantage of this, which I think most, get connected to an SBA lender so that they can get the money sooner than later and get your team back together if you've had to lay people off.
So let me give you a couple more details from the same document that Brian was just talking about. The definition of wages or payroll include employee group healthcare benefits, insurance premiums, retirement contributions, and covered leave. So it's not just payroll. It's payroll with those included. The covered loan period is February 15th of this year to June 30th of this year. So that would be the period of time this loan would cover. And for eligibility purposes, it requires lenders they're not determining your credit worthiness. They're determining two things. Were you operational? Were you in business on February 15th? And did you have employees from whom you paid salaries and payroll taxes? That's it. That's the eligibility criteria. So Brian, it's interesting. I've talked to a number of our members, small businesses, and there's a little bit of this is too good to be true reaction. And you and I had a conversation earlier about why this makes sense. This is a stimulus. This is literally trying the government is going to pay small businesses to keep people on their payroll who otherwise these companies might be laying off. Why does that make any sense from an economic stimulus point of view?
Yeah, and the idea is that there's a couple different aspects to it. So first is that it's money out in circulation. People are still going to be out conducting different economic activities, buying things, and to some extent just living their lives and having the resources to do that. But the other thing is that when this is a finite time period we're dealing with, there will be an end to this crisis. And what they're hoping for is that business will be ready to hit the ground running, reopen, and go as soon as it is safe on the healthcare front for them to do that. And if all the employees are kind of scattered to the wind, and businesses need to go out there and rehire and find their employees and get them back together, and it's just slowing down getting back to work. And so that's what really the hope is in this approach. This is not going to be hopefully not going to be for a very long period of time, but it's economically devastating for a short period of time. So take the extraordinary step of just holding these employee groups together, and hopefully we can just get back to business in a very short order from the time when we get the health all clear.
So unprecedented times, unprecedented measures, and I think small business owners are having a hard time sort of getting their head around this. There's such an inclination to say, if I see the lack of revenue coming, I have got now to do something about my expenses. And what this is really saying is, hang on to your expenses. They will be reimbursed to you by the federal government. So it's an unprecedented step taken by the government. Nobody who's in business today has ever lived through one of these, but that's the deal. And I think what we really want to say to our members is, let's get to work on understanding this. So one of the things we're trying to do is really understand the law in great detail, and B, make sure our members have access to that. So a couple of things. One, we've just done a little bit of math, and the math is $350 billion and 22 million small businesses within the United States. That's less than $20,000 per company. And so the government has made a promise or is making an offer that you take your payroll times 2.5, 2.5, monthly payroll times 2.5, we'll lend that to you and we'll make it forgivable. That is, that's way more than $20,000 per company. So really what we believe is, let's get to work on this for Michigan companies. Let's get to work on it so that Michigan companies, we can't do anything about other state companies, but we can do something about Michigan companies. So everybody needs to get educated on this and as quickly as possible. There's my little soapbox, but really, I believe Michigan could come out of this quicker. Michigan has some assets that, frankly, some other states don't have. One of them is the largest small business association in the country. One of them is a very good small business development center network throughout our state. We have really good and robust economic development organizations and local chambers of commerce. So I think we have a leg up as it relates to getting our members and our companies educated on this. To that end, yeah, go ahead.
You're going to talk about the webinar next, I
Yes.
think. So
Yes.
next week we're gonna get every detail that we can and get in this real deep.
So one of the things we're finding is this daily brief gives us the ability to sort of keep you up to date on what's happening. It doesn't give us the ability to go deep in subject. This is when we know we have to get some depth in. And so next Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, we'll have a webinar on the CARES Act itself, all the details. It'll be conducted by Maynard Custerison, the accounting firm. They will sort of dissect the law. It has actually a number of accounting tools and accounting advantages in the law as well. So we're really going to help you get educated about it. I suspect we'll run that webinar over and over again, and we're really trying to pivot, or we'll continue to do our daily briefings for as long as it's necessary. But we're going to add webinars so that we can get deep in several of these topics. And so the first one's next Tuesday on the CARES Act. Let's kind of focus now on the state a little bit. Brian, you I think you mentioned earlier that the state, we've gotten some direction now. And I think partly because we've been saying we're not getting much direction. We've gotten some direction both from the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity and from the Attorney General's office. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, so in the last few days, we have seen some updates and I'll say improvements in the websites. It wasn't that they went through and detailed every scenario that we were asking for clarity on. I think that's still going to be difficult to get. But what they did do is take the executive orders and put them into the executive order and the Homeland Security list and kind of put it into more common language and laid it out on a website which is much more comprehensible. So it doesn't necessarily, if you're operating kind of in a gray area, it doesn't necessarily give you the answer to that, although they do continue to add additional FAQs, frequently asked questions, on the governor's site. All of this is on our website, on the SBAM.org website as well, but they have they've improved it. So, but the main bit of clarity really has come from the statements that the governor has made, and to give you the context as you're deciding whether or not you're allowed to be open, because some people are still struggling with that decision. The governor said, if you have to ask if you're one of these critical or essential businesses, a life-sustaining business, if you have to ask, you're probably not. And I know that might seem like a one-off or just like a little quip, but it does give you a sense for the type of standard that they're looking for. And therefore, since the governor is the writer of the executive order, it's important that our members take to heart a statement like that. Okay, so it means that there is a higher threshold. They're not looking for technical compliance. They're looking for compliance with the spirit of the order. The second thing is that the Attorney General put out a website, and actually it's quite good. It doesn't say how a law enforcement officer is going to decide or decipher gray area and who can be open and who couldn't, but it does say that when a complaint comes in, that a law enforcement officer should first seek to uh, to interview the business owner, and then if they come to the conclusion that this business should not be open, they don't charge with a crime, they don't write a ticket. They simply inform them that we do not believe that you fit under this order. In other words, they give direction, explicit direction. Only if the business then refuses to follow that direction do they pursue other courses. So that was the guidance that the Attorney General put out that we thought was positive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not an answer on each individual thing, but she gave an example too, and this was one that I really appreciated seeing. And the example was that because we have had some questions on this. This example is kind of an extreme one, but let's say a comic book store also has a pop vending machine and sells snacks. Well, they can't stay open under the food exemption because they sell a de minimis amount of food. That one's obvious, but there are other businesses where that balance, maybe they're not mainly food, maybe they're 25% food, maybe they're 50% food. I mean, there's still going to be some gray area, but that was a helpful example for them to give. They also have indicated that there's some confusion on minimum basic operations. So, for example, like the Small Business Association of Michigan, we have designated just a couple of staff members that need to come in and open up, to collect the mail and process transactions, bring the checks to the bank. If somebody, actually, I don't think anybody's really paying membership right now, or not too many, but anyway, we still have to check the mail. We still have to do a couple of things. You can have minimum basic operational staff for that. So businesses, some are misinterpreting this and thinking, oh, that means that I can just run my business as long as I do it with fewer staff members. That's not the case. If you're not on that critical infrastructure list, then you can't do anything more than have some people to check on the premises, do the security, pick up the mail, meaning like process transactions, and maybe payroll if that has to be done on site, those sorts of things, but not really running the main business from there.
Yeah, I think that's been helpful, and we've been trying to give as a clear direction as we can by reading the direction given by the executive order and the governor and the attorney general. So thanks, and again, Brian, I think your voice has been helpful in them giving us more clarification, because it's really desperately needed, and we appreciate that direction. Let's turn to time seems like it's going so fast. Early this past week, the MEDC, the Strategic Fund, actually created a new program called the Small Business Relief Program. The Michigan Small Business Relief Program is $20 million. Micah Babcock has been kind of bird dogging that one for us. And Micah, what are you seeing about that new program?
Yeah, Rob. So just a few hours ago, the Michigan Small Business Relief Program actually came online. I know we were anticipating that it was going to come around the 1st of April, but they sped up their process, knowing how impacted small businesses were across our states. They wanted to get this program up and running as soon as possible. So the program I'm about to discuss is the one that we referenced earlier in the week that provides $20 million for small businesses in both grants and in loans. And these can be accessed through your local economic development organizations, such as Ann Arbor Spark, for people that are familiar with the group. So while the economic development organizations at a local level are actually going to be the ones vetting and distributing the funding, the state has provided one location for businesses across the state to apply to both the grant and the loan at the same exact time, which is fantastic. So the grants, just a reminder, are up to $10,000 for small businesses with under 50 employees. And then the loans are between $50,000 and $200,000 for businesses with under 100 employees. And the MEDC, just a reminder, anticipates this will impact about 1,100 businesses across our state. And as I said before, the application is live right now for many of these local economic development groups. So if you'd like to start filling out that data filling out those applications, make sure you go to michiganbusiness.org/COVID-19. And just from the few applications that I looked over, many of the local groups have different deadlines for these. So you want to get out there and start applying to these right now. One application I saw had as early as March 31st for a deadline for an application. And the other one I glanced at had April 3rd for the application deadline too. So if you're looking for that funding, make sure you're applying probably today.
And Micah, just to be specific, who exactly is eligible for this one? This one's not for everybody like the CARES Act we just talked about. This is a little more targeted, right?
Yeah, well, it's focused specifically on individuals that are having problems paying for payroll. So it's pretty similar. One of the restrictions that they had on the loans was that you got denied by another creditor before. I believe that they are going to be removing that requirement as well. The strategic fund is kind of being dynamic as the federal government is with a lot of their decisions they're making on requirements for a lot of these programs.
All right. And as I recall, that one was really aimed at companies who were required to close down through the executive orders. So in other words, if you're affected by it, but not required to close as a result of the executive order, I'm not sure you're eligible for that one.
Correct. You're correct on that. Specifically that were laid out to close.
Yeah. Okay, let's move along. This one we've been tracking mostly because everybody cares about this, but it really does affect small business, and that is, will the schools continue, will they go back to school in this school year, or will they not? And what will the impact of that be on employers? What are you hearing, Brian?
Well, just this morning, the governor said in an interview that it is not likely that schools will reopen this school year. So before school would have normally gotten out. It's pretty big news. It wasn't a surprise to me. In fact, I told my kids last week, I don't think that the schools are going to reopen. The governor did express some doubt that the schools would reopen. And so anybody who has somebody or is planning on putting somebody on family medical leave, remember before, because one of the new requirements that the federal government gave was people who have kids at home of school age, but their school is closed because of the COVID-19 crisis. And that's going to be everybody in Michigan, and that might be everybody in Michigan through the duration of this existing school year. So this is something to, I guess we wanted to mention it just so you can start thinking in a longer term horizon for your employees who have kids at home, because I think that it is, at least, even though we're going to see numbers probably get worse in the next week to 10 days in terms of the numbers of infections and people that are seriously ill and deaths, by the time hopefully that it'll crest. Some of the experts are saying they expect it to crest within a couple of weeks, and then at that point start coming down. But I don't think it's very likely that once the infection rate starts coming down that we'll get back to business as usual. I think it's still going to be a very slow ramp in to regular activities. And when you project that out, you see that there's not really much time left for school.
Yeah. So for all of you who have working parents and you've accommodated them, who may have taken sick leave or family medical leave, this will obviously impact that through the end of what would have been the school year. So there's that. Also, we've been watching the governor. She seemed to project that she was going to have an announcement about state tax filings and the deadline. There's already been a pushing out of the federal income tax filings to July 15th. What are you hearing from the governor at this point?
So just last night, the governor did telegraph that there would be something out today on state income tax filings and state income tax payments. You might recall that as an employer, your withholding and sales and use remittances were pushed off 30 days back from March 20th. But there hadn't been a decision yet on income tax filings and tax payments. The feds pushed off their tax payments to the 15th of July, and we had been hopeful that the state would also do that. Since accountants are not critical infrastructure employees, it creates quite a hurdle for some people, especially senior citizens that aren't as likely to be able to use electronic means. They still schedule appointments and they go to see their accountant. And then also a lot of people are in positions where it's not easy to get back to the office to get all the financials for your business income tax return either, or for your Schedule C or your Schedule E, depending on how you're organized. So this is an important one. We're hoping to see the date pushed out to match the federal date of the 15th of July. So we've been watching all day, refreshing the site to see, and unless it came out since we've been on this briefing, Rob, but as of when we went on, it hadn't been out yet.
So we will obviously stay on top of that one. I want to circle back, Brian, to the CARES Act. Several questions came in about sole props and independent contractors. Are they eligible under the CARES Act?
Yeah, for us, we were very, very relieved to see that they are included. Now, a lot of times when there's stuff for small business, they leave out 1099 style businesses. They leave out sole proprietors. And for us, even though we serve a lot of different types of businesses, we take a lot of pride in having a membership that has a lot of people they're in the gig economy. They are contractors and consultants and sole proprietors and one-person operations. They count too. In fact, I don't think they've ever been as important to our economy as they are right now. And so the fact that that is included is important. It's explicitly included in the legislation. What we don't know is how they're going to do the evaluation for the amounts. It's a little more straightforward if you're a C corporation or an LLC and you run all your payroll through that way. That's a little more clear than when you're maybe a sole proprietor and you're filing on your Schedule C and you don't really pay yourself a salary per se. You just take what you need because it's all kind of mixed in together. So we're gonna have to wait for some of the rules, but they are included. Also, I'd say the other thing, Rob, is that they're also included in unemployment, and that's a really big change. So this people that are 1099 employees, they're not able to file for unemployment today because they don't pay into the unemployment insurance system. But they're giving states, the federal government is giving states the ability to, well, not the ability, but it's really a mandate on states to provide the unemployment to a wider group, including these types of businesses. And they're doing a big increase for everybody, $600 a week in increase in unemployment benefits. So that could actually create a few complications when it comes to people coming back to work, because in Michigan right now, the top level unemployment you can receive is $362 per week. That's the most anybody can receive. Now, the most anybody can receive, it will be $962. And so it might create a little bit of tension between employees and employers when employers say, okay, we're calling people back to work, but if you make less than $47,000, you might rather be unemployed and on the unemployment system because that threshold is pretty high. So so this is something we're gonna have to monitor closely and potentially work with policymakers on how we're going to make sure that people get back to work when the work is available.
So that was actually one of the things that held this CARES Act up, was that very issue as it came along, because so many some of the Republican lawmakers were concerned about that issue. It's been a concern of the business community for a very long time that you can't make it so attractive to not work, and so obviously we're pretty concerned about that. Let me mention a couple things. We will be holding a briefing tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I think one of the things we're finding is there's just so many questions and so much information that's still coming in day to day, and so Brian and I are committed to continue to do this briefing into the weekend. We'll do it tomorrow, and we'll decide whether Sunday seems like there's enough to do a briefing on Sunday or not. If not, we'll be back Monday at 3 o'clock for the daily briefing. Let me also mention that I said earlier we're going to be doing more webinars. So Tuesday, 10 a.m., we'll break down the CARES Act. And that's the payroll protection part of that is the one that really affects small businesses. Also Friday, April 3rd at 10 o'clock, we'll be doing a webinar on navigating the small business financial options. This is really now trying to take all the pieces, the state's money, the early SBA money, the later SBA money, or the later stimulus money, how to stitch that all together. And I think there's a lot of almost strategy issues that small business owners are left with is how do I navigate this? So Friday, the 3rd at 10 a.m., we'll be doing a webinar on navigating the financial options. That is what we have today. We've been getting a lot of feedback that this is helpful. I hope it's helpful to all of you. I would love to have your feedback and continue to try to answer questions. You can submit questions to sbam@sbam.org. We're doing our best to try to answer those questions at the moment and also to collect them for our FAQs. Let's have a good weekend, and remember to wash your hands.
And don't touch your face. Good luck. See you tomorrow.